How are you there? Good day. It is the end of October today, and let's take a look at what happened in the war between Israel and Iran in the month of October. So, on the 1st of October, we opened the month with Iran sending 200 projectiles over Israel, of which most of them were intercepted by Israel's air defense system. Iran was doing that in retaliation for Israel's killing of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran, and also the leader of Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah, in Lebanon. This tit for tat has been going on for quite some time, but as the month progressed, we were waiting for an Israeli retaliation, and it has come. Israel attacked Iran in 3 waves, starting at 2 a.m. It sent 100 manned platforms, which means that they were not drones but 100 planes with men. The first target was the air defense systems in Syria and Iraq. The reason why they did this was so that they can punch through those 2 countries charging towards Iran. So that was the first phase of the attack. Once the air defense radar systems were destroyed in Iraq and Syria, then the 100 manned platforms from Israel were able to safely fly their pilots towards Iran. However, the pilots did not enter Iran because of fears of being shot down. So these advanced aircraft from Israel were able to deploy missiles before they even entered Syria. Once Iran was in sight, Israeli aircraft began to destroy the air defense system surrounding the oil resources, but not the oil resources itself, because there had been a political for Israel to avoid hitting oil facilities in Iran, as that would quicken a regional warfare and perhaps lead to a quick rising in oil prices and may have some negative effects on the upcoming US elections. So the Israelis targeted the air defense mechanisms around those oil facilities, which means that should the war escalate, those oil facilities in Iran are no longer safe. The air defense systems that were used are the S-300 that are Russian produced. Now we see the technological prowess of Israel, and together with the United States, that were able to use technology to break through the S-300 air defense system that was being used by Russia, and the same technology is now being deployed by the US in Ukraine to fight Russia. So Russia's S-300 has been found a very vulnerable, a weakness that we find there in the Russian defense systems. And this is not enough concerning Russia. I'm going to get back to the weaknesses that Russia suffered this month, and specifically why do we see North Korea coming into the fray. The Israeli Defense Forces also not only targeted these air defense systems, they also targeted plants developing missile solid fuel. This solid fuel is part of a key component in the production of intercontinental ballistic missiles. So effectively, Israel severely degraded Iran's ability to produce missiles. So there's a multiple sites that were bombed, including Pachin near Tehran and more than 20 other sites around Iran. And noting also that there was no targets in Iran's nuclear facilities. Also targeted were missile production facilities and surface-to-air missile factories. So Israel used what they call precision strikes to ensure the irreplaceable nature of the targets. This Iran's weakness actually affects Russia big time. It is estimated that it will take between 1 and 2 years for Iran to replace all the targeted facilities during this Israeli strike. How is Russia affected? Russia, as I said earlier on, that the S-300 Russia made has been found very weak, and the US and Israeli technology is able to breach through it, which means in a World War III scenario, Russia will not be able to defend itself because the best thing that they have, the S-300, can be breached by the US and the Israeli technology. Yet Israel still has the Iron Dome, which is stronger, and Iran has been failing to breach through that. Even though Iran sent 200 projectiles into Israel at the beginning of the month, the Iron Dome was able to absorb the majority of them. So there's also the severe degrading of Iran's ability to produce missiles that were used by Russia in the war against Ukraine affects Russia severely. And the drone facilities as well uh, were destroyed. We know that Russia has been relying extensively on Iranian made drones in their war against Ukraine. So, with Israel bombing and destroying Iran's ability to produce drones, it has got a negative effect on Russia's attempt to defeat Ukraine. So, in that way, Israel has indirectly, or USA and Israel have indirectly weakened Russia. Hence, we see towards the end of the month, North Korea sending their army to aid Russia in the Ukraine war because Iran has been severely damaged. Therefore, Russia is calling in its other ally, which is North Korea. Now, we are yet to see the replacement abilities of North Korea. I do not think they are good and drones, and but then they do have intercontinental ballistic missiles, the North Koreans. So the backup of Russia is running out. The biggest backup of Russia that will be forced to come in at the end of the day is China. Should the US and Ukraine be able to withstand a coalition of Russia and North Korea, severely degrading the North Korean effort in Russia, China will eventually be forced to come out of its hiding place. And the United States and its allies is going to be ready for China because in that region already, the US Navy assets in the Middle East are so surrounding the enemy territory such that Iran and its allies are no match for Israel and her allies. Iran is playing now a political game of threatening other regional countries in the GCC, threatening that should Israel bomb their oil facilities, Iran would also bomb oil facilities in Saudi Arabia, Oman, and in other countries which are pro United States of America. That would be a huge catastrophe. Oil prices will shoot up the roof and we will get an inflation across the world. So that is an S that the Iranians are holding right now. So they are holding the world at ransom with that card. So Israel, for now, has been able to withhold its ability to strike Iranian oil facilities. After the United States elections are done and dusted, and since the air defense systems surrounding the oil facilities in Iran have been destroyed, there is no telling what might happen next. Is Israel might desire to pursue Iranian oil facilities and eventually the Iranian regime itself, freeing millions of Iranian people who are sick and tired of the current regime. The nuclear facilities were not targeted this time around, but we do know that Iran has got activities that it does surrounding nuclear projects around the world, including in countries that are pro-Iranian. For example, in Zimbabwe, Iran has got scientists that are doing something that we do not know. And seeing that Israel has been targeting uh, assets belonging to Iran, even in other countries outside Iran, for example, in Iraq and Syria, there is no limit as to how many countries that are in cohorts with Iran could be targeted by Israel. I do not know what the Iranian scientists are doing in Zimbabwe, a country that is rich in uranium. And I know that the Iranians are busy around the world. And Israel Defense Forces is obviously looking at those options. That is why I've always been saying that Itim Nangagwa is a threat to national security and to the lives of the people of Zimbabwe. Should the Iran scientists be found to be busy doing some nuclear or secret nuclear program in Zimbabwe, and Israel gets to find out about it, as Israel escalates the war and begins to target Iranian nuclear sites, they will not only target in Iran, but they will also target in other foreign jurisdictions as well. I hope that those nuclear scientists in Zimbabwe or Iranian scientists in Zimbabwe are not working on a nuclear project or any kind of facility or any kind of system to facilitate Iran's nuclear program in Zimbabwe. For that will force the hand of the Israeli Defense Force to send intercontinental ballistic missiles to Zimbabwe. And I would know where the factories are, knowing how the Iranians behave, how they like to hide their things in civilian populations. I will not be surprised if they put a factory in Mbare, forcing the Israeli Defense Force to bomb Mbare, or a factory in the city center of Harare. Now you begin to see the risk of this Itim Nangagwa government's alliance with the Iranians, aiding the enemy against the mighty Israel. As I said, I do not know what the scientists are doing. I cannot authoritatively tell you that they are working on a nuclear program. I do not know that. But one thing that has been said officially is that there's Iranian scientists in Zimbabwe, and we were not told what they were doing. But knowing that the Iranian regime is much more focused, consumed on developing weapons against Israel, instead of building their economy, they are so much consumed with destroying Israel. And they send their scientists all over the world for that one purpose. So it is a speculation that such a thing is possible, could be possibly be happening in Zimbabwe. And there is a risk of our country being part of a wider target in this war that is predominantly a Middle East war. We also know that Iran gave money to the ANC when the ANC was broke. That is the reason why South Africa is taking Israel to court. Should the war escalate through various avenues, whether they're military or geopolitical or diplomatic avenues, Zimbabwe and South Africa become enemy territory and become a target for whatever plan of action Israel may take for them to maintain their right to defend themselves. These are risks that Zimbabwean policymakers should be concerned about and not take them lightly and not dismiss them because they are said by somebody whom they do not respect. If indeed the Iranian scientists are on a nefarious program that is linked to Iran's nuclear ambitions, you can take it to the bank that one day Israel will visit Zimbabwe unannounced and will destroy facilities that Iran is developing in Zimbabwe. Thanks to your mafia godfather, Idi Mnangagwa. I know we Zimbabweans value our lives. We must begin to analyze our national security on a much deeper level than that, and not just rakasha for no good reason. For you can die defending nonsense, rakashing nonsense. A few months ago, Zimbabwe's Deputy President Constantine Chiwenga visited Iran. And last year, the Iranian president also visited Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe's ties with Iran have strengthened in the past 12 months. Robert Mugabe did not have bad relations with Iran, but there was a bit of a distance. Though Robert welcomed the Iranians and said that since Zimbabwe and Iran are both countries that are under US sanction, it is important for these two countries to unite. And I remember Robert actually giving access to Zimbabwe's uranium to Iran, should Iran require it. Ever since those days, we have not seen much diplomatic action between the two countries. But in the past 12 months, it has ramped up. There are these programs that are between Zimbabwe and Iran. What we're told about scientists, tractors, something to do with agriculture, education, some kind of cultural exchange. But I do know that top priority of Iranian foreign policy is its war that it is waging. It was last year when the then Iranian president went around countries, not just in Africa, but also in South America, countries that are perceived to be anti-USA or China and Russia leaning. He did that tour last year, and Zimbabwe was one of those countries that were included. The risk, therefore, there is that Iran is a country at war, and Iran is a country that is losing war. Its allies, Russia, is also losing a war. Israel's hit on Iran has debilitated Iran's war capabilities. Should Iran strike back at Israel after the US elections, definitely Israel will hit Iran's nuclear facilities. And there's no telling how many nuclear facilities are there outside Iran. There's no telling what other activities in Iran's war ecosystems are also in Africa, specifically in Zimbabwe. Should Israeli intelligence finger our country, finger an involvement of our country in Iran's weaponry ecosystem, we are going to have a big problem, a problem that we've never imagined before. As we've seen this month, Israel first bombed the defense systems of Syria and Iraq before reaching Iran. All the countries that are aiding Iran, whether aiding Iran to develop a nuclear weapon, whether aiding Iran financially, for Iran to be able to evade any form of sanctions, or whether aiding Iranian industries that are producing missiles or drones or anything that is war related, or countries that are easily providing resources to Iran's war machinery, those countries are going to be a target in Israel's war against its enemies. In a nutshell, Iran is a big risk for Zimbabwe. We cannot afford that risk. Idi Mnangagwa and General Chiwenga are both Iranian leaning. As we have seen that the United States of America has not yet deployed its naval assets in the Middle East. Of course, the United States has got hundreds of military bases around the world. Already, through Israel, Iran has been debilitated. Their allies, Hamas and Hezbollah, has been crushed severely, even to the extent of affecting Russia's ability to wage a war on Ukraine. Hence, Russia is now calling on North Korea. It shows how advanced the US and the West are as far as this global warfare is concerned. My big concern is my country, Zimbabwe, which is led by a dictator with dictatorial tendencies like the Iranian regime leaders, and being aligned together for their dislike of accountability. If Idi Mnangagwa is found to be strengthening the Iranian regime against Israel, it goes to say that even Idi Mnangagwa is going to be severely debilitated by Israel, and he will not be able to recover from that one. Take this message to the State House so that they can know and believe that the Lord breathes fire, and he will fire those who are found at the wrong seat. For Israel is a force for good in the world. Israel is even a force for good in the Middle East. Ask Saudi Arabia and the UAE and countries in the Middle East GCC that have been leaning closer and closer to Israel and the United States. Their economies have done well. Their nations are fairly peaceful and stable, and the conditions of human rights has improved tremendously since they have been leaning to a global West, or rather Western countries that value human progress. Iran, Iraq, Syria is the axis of evil that Benjamin Netanyahu was talking about at his United Nations address. Israel is appealing to the axis of good in the GCC to be found to be on the right side. Those aligning themselves with Iran, like Idi Mnangagwa, belong to the axis of evil. These are the gentlemen who are bringing the world into darkness. The war in Israel is a war for the survival of all humanity. It is a war against global tyranny, global jihadism, and backwardness. If Israel loses the war against Iran and Russia winning the war in Ukraine, Russia will attack all of Europe. The success of Europe will go down the drain, including the United Kingdom and eventually the United States of America. A world led by Iran, Russia, and China and North Korea is a horror. You do not want to see that. In as much as these clever kids in Harvard who are protesting against Israel, as clever as they think they are, when their favorite Hamas and Hezbollah wins against Israel, there will be no Harvard to go to. There will be no USA. There will be no freedoms. So those kids in the universities, Massachusetts, Harvard, Princeton, thinking that they are wise and protesting against Israel are fools. If those universities are going to produce global leaders who are senseless, who cannot get deeper into the issues and understand what is at stake here, of course, we do not want to see innocent civilians lose their lives. But the broader picture here is that Israel has to save humanity. Take a look at the Chinese CCP. Take a look at the Russia. Take a look at the Iranian regime. Take a look at North Korea. Those are the kind of regimes that you people that hate Israel, hate USA, are actually fighting for. I do know that none of you want that outcome, but you just are lazy to think deeper and understand issues and analyze issues appropriately. A lot of people blame Israel and USA simply out of jealousy, not because they can do anything better or know of any better option. The hatred of Israel is just based on jealousy. For if Israel loses this war, then none of those Israeli haters will want to live in a world run by Vladimir Putin, China, North Korea, and Iran. None of them want that. They want to enjoy the good living and the good political climate provided by the United States and Israel and Jewish people. But at the same time, whilst they're hating the very same hand that feeds them. I, on the other hand, am not a fool. I do not support foolishness. I do not support Hamas. I do not support Hezbollah. I do not support Iran. I do not support Russia. I do not support North Korea. And I believe China is wrong by supporting these regimes. The United States is currently the leader of the world. And the current world order has been doing a fantastic job in improving human progress, human dignity, human rights. and Iran, because of their jealousy and hatred for Jewish people, does not want to see good things happen. That is why they sent Hamas to terrorize the children of Israel on October the 7th last year, because they couldn't imagine a world where Israel is closer to Saudi Arabia and the GCC. They had to put in their ugly hand there through Hamas in order to cause mayhem and trick the Islamic population into believing that Iranian's war is a war of all Muslims. It's not a war for good Muslims. It's a war just for the Ayatollah and the evil Iranian regime that is even hated in Iran. The Iranian regime is just like the ZANU-PF regime in Zimbabwe. Both of them are oppressive. But through their propaganda, they're able to fool 1/3 of the world's population who are all Muslim, who, because of religious affiliation, have been fooled by Iran to support a war against their own progress. Muslims around the world have progressed under the leadership of the United States as the global superpower. Lives of ordinary Muslims is much, much, much better in a world run through Judeo-Christian values, which give you unlimited religious rights, even the right to worship Muhammad, even though we believe that Christ is the only way to salvation. But in a world run by Iran, all those religious rights will be taken away. Do not rejoice if you're Muslim and say, well, we are Muslim. It will be a world run by Muslims. I'm a Muslim, so I keep my religious right. It's not enough. Even within the Muslim doctrine, they will intensify and put pressure in bringing archaic customs and traditions and rules that will also enslave Muslim people. First of all, Muslim women, they will reverse women rights of Muslims. Girls won't be allowed to go to school. And even Muslim men who will be subjected to be beaten, serving the state. We go back to the past. We go back to serfdom. It's a dark world that is going to be led by Ayatollah. A very wise and intelligent Muslim man and woman could quietly support Israel, for it is the safe method of delivering the world from the darkness or from the axis of evil. The religion is not evil, but the religious leader has got a terrible intention that has to be addressed and understood. Have a great day. God bless you. And God bless Israel. And God bless Zimbabwe.